Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2D6 Friday, episode 23. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. 2D6 Friday, it's back. I haven't done one of these quite a while, actually. Technically, the last one you could say was the live Christmas Day special, although that wasn't a Friday, so I'm not sure if I should officially count that in the official timeline of this show's history. We've got a few people in the chat so far. I imagine more people will be popping in shortly because this is a slightly earlier start time than usual. So certain people will probably only be made aware of the fact that the show is going on when they see it pop up on their YouTube feed on the subscription page at some point in the next few minutes. So I'll go and see who's in the live chat in about 5 minutes time once it's filled up, no doubt. Only 7 people in here at the moment. That is an outrage. Oh, by the way, this is genuine fur, by the way. This is actually a badger that I went out and caught, and I actually skinned it myself. Hope no one particularly minds that too much. Actually, it's getting too hot with that in there. I don't know why this room is so hot and the rest of the house is so cold. That's attics for you, I suppose. So, well, since it's been a few weeks since we've had a Friday all-purpose wargaming show like this, then that does mean that the wargaming topics have been flying in thick and fast. Usually, you can imagine the wargaming topics like a piece of fresh fruit. And when you put them through a juicer, you can squeeze out about that much juice, I would say, every couple of weeks, which is how these shows have been coming in, that kind of rate. So now, since it's been maybe a month or so, maybe 6 weeks since I've done one of these shows for reals, then the level of juice, the fruit is actually full to bursting at the moment. And as soon as it touches the squeezer, it's just going to go everywhere, all over everyone's face, through the internet. There's just going to be untold, juicy wargaming content spilling out of every fruity orifice onto every available surface, out of your monitors, out of your speakers. You're going to be flooded, basically. You'll be fortunate if you don't drown in wargaming goodness. Okay, it's starting to fill up a bit now. Let's see who we've got in here. We've got Mickey Jenbo, we've got Newbie, we've got Dreddy, we've got Ruhark, we've got Josh Joyce. Who else have we got in there? A few people not yet commenting. So we've got a few things we're going to touch on first of all, and we're also going to look at some pictures of a 40k game I played the other day. I don't really feel like I can justify doing a full battle report of 40k on my channel currently, because the amount of time it takes to create a battle report, and then there isn't that much demand for them on my channel. Each one of them gets a couple of hundred views at most, I think. Whereas when I do an Age of Sigmar battle report, it's likely to get over 1,000 at least. And if I do a Kings of War battle report, it should end up somewhere around about 800. So the amount of time that gets put in, I'm not sure it's really justified. And also the fact that the 40k games I have, the people I play with can't arrive here until quite late on the day we actually have the games, usually about 6 or 7 p.m. So by the time we've set up and started playing, any extra time is just going to push us closer and closer towards the perilous region of midnight, where everyone starts getting too tired. But I do have some opinions on 40k, just the general nature of the game and where it's going. Hopefully after the 40k end times, if you will, that have been slapping us around the face these last few weeks. Let's see, we've got a couple more people just popped in. We've got Ulium1 has appeared. Apparently this is the first time catching one of my shows live. Hello there. Bazooka J Rambo is in there as well. Yes, you didn't realize it was an early one. It is early. Let's see. Newbie is more likely to watch 40k bat reps than others because he doesn't really play any of the other games. Well, there are a few 40k fanatics out there, but generally on this channel there aren't too many in the audience. So, first things first, let's talk about some 40k, shall we? There are going to be other game systems discussed later on, but first of all, let's have a look at the old Warhammer 40k community. So, the Gathering Storm, of course, this big golden dude, and I actually feel more knowledgeable about the Warhammer 40,000 fluff than ever before, because I did watch a bit of Warhammer TV earlier when they were going into this in incredible detail. So apparently a Grandmaster of the Grey Knights, I don't know much about the Grey Knights other than the fact that they are psychic warriors who smite chaos wherever it may stand. That's the gist of it, I think. Don't know too much about them, and he looks kind of funny actually. I'm not really too keen on that model at all. So let's go down. Cypher, I know about this dude, kind of. Questionable motives. No one knows if he just disappears or whether he's actually dead. I think in the rules it says if Cypher dies in your games, just assume that he ran away or disappeared into a portal or something. Because the only time I've seen him used in a game, he was stepped on by an Imperial Knight, and it killed him in one hit. It was the same game when that same Imperial Knight stepped on an entire squad of Deathwing Knights and killed all of them by virtue of rolling a single 6. There were no further dice rolls required. So he's pretty cool. Cloaks are always nice. And they are pretty big on cloaks, aren't they? These swirly ones that go around the front of the model, since they moved all these characters into plastic, and they can add a lot more dynamic poses. Not like the old flat cloaks that just used to sit at the back with, I suppose, that arm. You could have seen that on an old model, because the arms always went out to the side, didn't they? But this arm would be like somewhere down here, or maybe the other arm up in the air as well. Then we've got Mr. Reboot Gullyman, and everyone on the internet seems to call him Rowboat Girlyman. I'm not sure how long that's been a thing, but I haven't actually seen his name written out properly by anyone commenting on any posts on this topic. So the old model, the Forge World one, was very majestic looking, and this one, it's very, very different. This is definitely a bit more on the cartoonish side, and some people haven't been too thrilled about that change. It looks fairly cool. It's very, very heroic kind of pose he's got there. And the scale, it looks like the same way people weren't too impressed when the old Carl Franz on a Griffin came out and its head was quite small because they were going for some kind of depth perception. And maybe that's what they're going for with this model here. It could just be the camera angle. You'd have to see it up close. But they try to make them look very heroic, and the scale looks a bit odd. The thighs look quite small, and the shins look very large. But lots of detail, obviously, because it's a new GW kit, so what do you expect? And of course, he comes with the option of a helmet as well, which, and I don't think anyone would put a helmet on him, would they? Makes him look like more of a generic Space Marine then. Most of the characters tend to have exposed facial regions, don't they? So, yeah, pretty cool. But what's much cooler than all of this stuff, and I will talk about this later on, talk about what the 40k potential end times could mean and what I would like to see that do to the 40k universe and the game. But I'm going to start showing off some images of a game of 40k I played the other day now, which I didn't feel was going to go to a full battle report. So I just took a few pictures, and you'll be able to see my humorous captions at the top there, starting with the Emperor's toilet paper. Now, you may think that's a little bit strange, but you will also recall I don't take the 40k fluff entirely that seriously. It would be fair to say. I don't take any of the fluff that seriously, to be completely honest. And the 40k fluff in particular, because I don't know much about it and I've never put in that much effort to research it. But the people I play 40k with are much more into the fluff than I am. So I kind of harvest a bit of their knowledge and put my own humorous spin on it. So the scenario that we ended up with here was, I wasn't actually sure which armies people were going to bring, but I had this scenario in mind. Because the 40k universe and all the Eye of Terror and all that nonsense is just going haywire and chaos are flooding in, I was thinking it's about time that the Emperor got off his throne, or as I like to think of it, his personal toilet that he's just been sat on for a really long time, and he probably just fell asleep in there. And the little door has the occupied sign, and maybe all the tech priests and everyone are rushing around, all his guard are going nuts because the occupied symbol just disappeared from the door. Like the green light has come on instead of the red. So that means he's ready to get out. But there's one little snag, you see. All this time that he's been in there, the official Imperial toilet paper, it's been so long that it's completely degraded. So it's just a little cardboard roll flapping around now. So he needs someone to deliver some sacred parchment to him so that he can finally complete his business on the throne and he can get back to waging war on chaos and kicking the butts of all these infidels and so forth. So we actually rolled off to see before the game whether it was going to be the forces of the Imperium delivering the toilet paper or the parchment, or whether it was going to be the forces of chaos stealing it in transit. Because the scenario was going to be whoever is trying to transport the sacred parchment is going to have to deliver it to like an end zone in the center at the other end of the table. So with the roll, it turned out that the Imperial forces were trying to deliver that sacred parchment to the Emperor. And the forces of the Imperium were Dark Angels, mainly Deathwing, and the... Now, are they Mechanicus or Mechanicum? I can't remember, but I think they're Skitari or something like that. But they were teamed up with my Deathwing, and we were taking on the forces of the Chaos Space Marines with a few demons thrown in as well. It was very, very mixed Chaos Space Marine force. Some of them had the mark of Slaanesh on them. And you can see the Chaos have got like a defensive line around here. They were forced to deploy a couple of squads halfway up the table, and the rest could stay back, just so they didn't completely blockade this little end zone here that the Imperium are trying to reach. And the Imperial units, let's have a look if we've got any. Here we go. You can see them there. Some Terminators are obviously inside the Land Raider. Some of them have little orange tokens on. Because we had 4 of these sacred parchments, and we put them on 4 of our units, and we secretly wrote down which 2 of them were genuine and which 2 were just cheap forgeries that would just fall apart as soon as any pressure was applied. So that was totally secret, and if we get 1 of them off the table, it's a draw. If we get 2 of them off the table, the Imperium win, and if we don't get any off the table, then Chaos win. So really the best bet for Chaos is to just destroy all 4 units that are carrying these things. So the units that have them, there is a little unit here of some kind of mind-controlled unit, and they're represented by Tyranids with little helmets on, but I'm not sure what the name of that unit actually is. The Land Raider has one, the Deathwing Knights that are inside the Land Raider have one, and there's a big squad of Skitari thingamajigs here, and they have one as well. So on the other side, there's some Space Marines and some various snipers of varying descriptions. You can see these Chaos Cultists up here on this building as well. They're holding that region there. So there's the demons as well, the pink horrors. You didn't actually have any models for blue horrors or brimstone horrors, so I'll let you know what that means at some point shortly, because that is going to come up. I'm not going to take a huge amount of time describing this game, but I'll give you the gist of it. So, of course, in turn 1, the Land Raider gets immobilized, carrying one of the potential sacred parchments. And I think this happens every time I try to use the Land Raider. It just gets blown up instantly. I think it was only 1 las cannon shot took it down, or immobilized it, which makes it effectively useless because it's the Land Raider armed with short-range weaponry. So, wow, immobilized. The Deathwing Knights are just going to have to walk all the way up the battlefield. We didn't have a turn limit on this game, by the way, just so you know. And the Deathwing Knights did pile out into the horrors, and really, the Deathwing Knights just do a billion wounds a turn, especially against Chaos. Not so much against Chaos Demons, I don't think, but it doesn't really matter, because the extra bonus they have is only really useful against power armor or better, something like that. Then over here, there's a bit of smoke coming out of Chaos Rhino. Any of these pictures that don't matter too much, I'm going to go through. They've got Vindicator as well. They've got some units inside vehicles, including Abaddon, or Abaddon, or however you want to pronounce it. And look at that, turn 2. So the Land Raider got to fire 1 round of assault cannon shots, and then it got blown up completely. Wow. And you can see it turns into a bit of carnage in the middle here, because actually these Terminators should have been dead. Because when they first tried to deep strike, the squad is so big, there was nowhere on the table they could actually safely land, because on average they were always going to scatter into terrain unless they got a direct hit. So the first time they came down, they would have scattered into an enemy unit, and then I rolled a 1 on the table, which meant they would have died. However, that would have pretty much just been game over at that point, if they'd been killed. So our opponent decided, you know what, let's just put them over there somewhere else. So I tried again the next turn, and they actually scattered into something again, which probably would have killed them. So we just allowed them to move back a bit and scatter that way safely, because it's a bit silly, really, how a huge, expensive unit like that can just disappear purely because we put a lot of terrain on the table. Oh, Skeleton Flower has turned up in the chat late. Under the Shadow of Trees is also here. Anybody else commenting away in there? Rob Lloyd Sweet is here. Yes, it is grim and dark in the future of the 41st millennium, or whichever millennium we're about to move into, perhaps soon. So you can see there's a Chaos Land Raider as well, and that has actually excreted its Abaddon and his comrades there, who are Chaos Terminators, and they're working their way towards some of the Skitari stuff, that popped down there as a result of a deep strike and then started shooting the backs of all these vehicles. Over here, there's just a Chaos unit coming out of Rhino, nothing too exciting there. And this fight, I'm going to tell you that this went on for about 4 turns. The Knights were fighting the Pink Horrors, and the Knights didn't take any casualties because I just refused to fail any saves. And after killing them, because he didn't have any blue or brimstone horrors, we just decided, let's just keep a note on a piece of paper of how many horrors there should be. So I think we did it wrong at first, and then the brimstone horrors are supposed to have 2 wounds each as well. But he didn't have any models, so I think eventually we just decided, he decided without telling us that he was only going to give them 1 wound each to get it over with, because he thought it was a bit silly without actually having the models there. So they did get chewed through eventually, but they did hold up a very expensive unit for 4 turns, even though they were so cheap. It's just ridiculous the amount of splitting they do. You're probably best off just leaving them alone. And then this guy, this Space Marine with the plasma cannon, was the only guy left on his own. And he actually completely blows up that Rhino, I think, and he takes out half that squad as well. Because he didn't want to move, obviously, because he wouldn't be able to shoot. So he was just sitting there after all his comrades got killed and just pelting everything, because they didn't want to go after him, because he's just one guy on his own, and there were more viable targets that were carrying potential sacred parchments. So they left him and then lived to regret that, or died to regret that, shall we say. The Deathwing do eventually get through the horrors, and they start just working their way up here. There's going to be an almighty showdown between the Deathwing Knights with the Chaplain and Abaddon and his personal retinue of Terminators there. These Terminators are just running and gunning, pretty much taking out cultists as they go. And all these tanks have been blown up now. And look at this fight here. So, Mr. Abaddon and the Deathwing fighting each other. Now, because the Deathwing Knights are touching each other, which sounds very weird, but when they're touching at least 2 models, they get an extra toughness or something. So they're extra tough. I'm not sure it mattered too much in this instance, because the Chaos Terminators probably have pretty beefy weapons regardless. They do, I think they have a mark of Slanesh possibly on them, so I think they were going first, but they didn't actually do any damage because I passed so many invulnerable saves, even against Abaddon with all his rerolls and a billion attacks. And then when I hit them, I just killed them all. And you can see the other players involved in the game here looking on in awe at this battle. And then, look at that. Abaddon, where you gone, bro? Yes. The Deathwing Knights, I think they must have taken any casualties? Nope, they didn't, because that's still the full complement of troops there. So they didn't lose anyone, and they killed an entire squad of Chaos Terminators and Abaddon. So that's a very impressive performance there. But they are just pretty tasty all around against Chaos. So they're carrying that sacred parchment, and we're on to the final image now. So in the last couple of turns, it looked like we were getting absolutely massacred at one point by the forces of Chaos. But then, for some reason, it started to turn around. The look of the dice started to change. It was like our Chaos opponent couldn't roll anything but 6s for the first 3 turns, and then for the following turns after that, he couldn't roll anything but 1s. So everything just started to fail for him. He only had a Helldrake left alive, chasing around our troops with the parchment. You can see one of them is alive under there carrying it, and he was like circling the area, trying to toast this guy and drop bombs on his head and kill the Deathwing. You can see a couple of them have actually died from shooting now. But they actually make it off the table, and the Helldrake, because he didn't want to land it, because I would just charge it and rip it to a zillion pieces with the Deathwing Knights. So he was having to fly around quite far until the final turn, and then he didn't roll very well when he did come closer to the ground. So they were able to escape, and this guy under here was able to escape as well. And it turned out that both of those units were the ones carrying the genuine Emperor's Parchment, which means that the forces of the Imperium reigned supreme, and the Emperor can now consult his sacred toilet paper parchment and obtain the necessary wisdom that he needs before he can sit up off the throne and then lead his forces to victory over the forces of Chaos. So victory snatched from the jaws of defeat there, because we really were taking the ultimate beating for the first few turns. And I think the Chaos player here has lost. Of the games he's played in my game room, I think he's lost something like 8 out of 10. He has a very, very terrible record, so very unfortunate for him this game. Well then, I'm going to take a breath after that and take a sip of delicious blackcurrant juice. Right, let's see what everyone has been saying in the chat as we drop this little screen share here. Okay, also I'll be interested to know what any of you guys think of things that you would like to see change in 40k, and in terms of the setting and in terms of the rules as well. I have a major problem with a lot of the rules. The setting doesn't really bother me, but I'm sure that's going to move on as well. So anyone that's got any thoughts, drop them in the chat right now. So let's see what people have been saying here. Someone talking about the Hell Turkey. Yep. And there is talk of sweatpants as well. Under the shadow of trees, buying another squad of pink horrors. Good old pink horrors. So you may have noticed if you look in the chat window, there is actually a new feature called Super Chat on YouTube now, which hasn't been enabled on all channels, but for some reason it's been enabled on mine. And apparently what that means is that people can pay real money to have their comments stand out. Now, I don't think that's going to be particularly useful on wargaming channels like this one, because I can't think of any live wargaming show that has enough viewers to warrant people spending their own hard-earned cash to make their comment pop out and maybe stay on the screen for longer, because the chat just doesn't move fast enough usually. Maybe if, like, Mickey Genver and Newbie are in here just having a really crazy back and forth, it'll fly by for a few minutes. But I think it's really meant for the kind of big-time streamers that maybe have 1,000 viewers at once, something like that, where people's comments are going to get lost in the shuffle forever. So I could see people paying money in those situations. I don't think it's going to be too useful here, though. But, of course, if anyone wants to do that, then they're free to. I don't know how much money I would actually make out of that. I think YouTube are going to take a significantly larger cut than I would. So anyone who wants to fund the old YouTube money-making business capitalist machine, then you can drop a super chat in there if you feel like. Newbie apparently might spend his life savings on it, but he only has £20, he says. Rob Lloyd, sweet, hasn't played 40k. What's so wrong with it? Well, we'll get into that in a minute. Okay, has anyone given any thoughts on it? Skeleton Flower, the Helldrake is one of the very few non-Xenos vehicles I actually like. Most people seem to hate it and think it looks like a turkey. I am a bit ambivalent on the old Helldrake. Bazooka J. Rambo, it's fun to see the Primarchs return. Perhaps they will cause upset with the High Lords of Terror and then worshipping the Emperor as a god when the Primarchs don't. Well, I don't know what to say to that. David Kitely says, Andy, mate, when are we going to see your Kings of War dwarves? Love them guys. Well, I don't really have a Kings of War dwarf army as such. I do have my old Warhammer 8th edition dwarves, which can kind of make a Kings of War army. It's not a particularly good Kings of War army because a lot of them seem to have cavalry nowadays, and I obviously don't have any of that since all my models are from 8th edition Warhammer. But I can actually make a list that just about reaches 2,000 points, which is the standard tournament level. So I could make a list, it just probably wouldn't be a good one. And I have a lot of war machines compared to the amount of regiments I could put out. He loves the green bases, apparently. Yep, they are indeed a treat, an old school treat, the tastiest of all. Like, it's like finding an old, delicious chocolate bar or something from the 80s, and you open it, and it still smells sweet. You wouldn't eat it because you would immediately die from food poisoning, probably, but you get that nostalgic scent wafting into your nostrils. That's how I would describe the old green bases with green flock. Skeleton Flower highly dislikes true line of sight in any game. Most games, I would agree with you on dislike of true line of sight. I think it works in Dead Zone because they made it so simple. It's just if you can see any part of the model, you can see it. And there's only any kind of modifier if you can see 100% of the model. So usually you're not going to have too many arguments, because to see 100%, you really have to be stood on a roof looking down, and they have to be stood like completely in the open. Even if a tiny bit of their base is hidden, it's still not considered 100%. So you have to really make the rules as simple as possible when you go with true line of sight, I think. Because in most games, models have quite dynamic poses, or they're kneeling or crouching or with their arm in the air waving a sword about. So usually you can model for advantage, unfortunately, depending how much terrain there is as well. There is a way you can do it so it's like a hybrid of true line of sight where you can, if you can see the model or where the model should go up to, like you know the actual height of the model, and if you can see up to there, like I know there's certain games where you have a little template you can put behind the miniature that shows you how tall it's supposed to be and how wide. So the pose doesn't really matter because you're just going by that template. So there are ways you can do that. But I think the way, let's say, Kings of War does it is quite good, where every model just has a height, and if you are not above that height, you just can't see over them. I quite like that. That keeps things very, very simple. No nonsense whatsoever. Let's see. Rob Lloyd Sweet says a perfectly ripe strawberry. I don't know what he's referring to there, but you could describe this show as a perfectly ripe strawberry, couldn't you? Mickey Jennifer, or discovering an Old Man Remington, a relic from the 80s. I think by the 80s, Old Man Remington was still something of a relic already by then. Skeleton Flower, that sounds acceptable, actually. I'm assuming he was talking about the line of sight with the template behind the model. I haven't seen many games that do that, actually. It's only one or two. None of them really big game systems seem to do that. And there's some games where they just go by the base size. I think War Machine plays it like that. Under the Shadow of Trees. I feel they just need to make the rules more streamlined. I love the way in AOS all the rules are on one data sheet, so you don't have to look through a dozen different books to find rules for your unit. Yes, 40k, the game the other day, it wasn't even the worst offender of the games that I've played of 40k, but it still had a lot of moments where, what does that unit do again? Let's just look up their page. Ah, yes, it gives them this rule and this rule and this rule. But nowhere does it actually say what those rules do. So let's go on this treasure hunt. Let's see what this rule A does. It says it's on page 87. Here we go. Rule A. This rule means that the model has rule X and rule Z. See main rule book. Okay, let's go to the main rule book. Rule book. Rule X. This rule means that the model is immune to rule T. Okay, now where's that? Find rule T. So it's just an endless treasure hunt of rules searching. If you just put everything that they can do on one page with that model, I know if you have the electronic versions of codexes, you can just tap some of the buttons, tap some of the words on the screen, and it'll tell you exactly what that rule is. But most people still like to have something rigid and hardback between their fingers, I think. So I would like to see them just bring out war scrolls like they do for Age of Sigmar. We just, here's Space Marine Tactical Squad. Here's their special rules, here's their special rules, here's their special rules. It's no refer to page whatever of this other supplement. It's just all right there in front of you. So if you want to field a tactical squad, you just need that piece of paper. And I think that probably is the way they're going to go, because it is one of the most bloated game systems I've ever seen, 40k at the moment. There's some obscene number of publications, and if you don't own all of them, then there's going to be something that you can't do in one of the others, because they all have to be cross-referenced against each other. And it's an endless source of frustration for players the world over. I'm sure the absolute experts who dedicate their lives almost to playing 40k know absolutely everything there is to know. Even they probably have to go hunting now and then. But something like Age of Sigmar, you can play that casually because all the rules are just right in front of you, easy to find. Skeleton Flower, AOS did a superb job with keeping all the rules for a unit on their scroll. Malifaux also does the same. It's so convenient and nice. Yeah, most rules do that. In the Mantic games, like Kings of War and Dead Zone, the units will have all their stats on a particular page, and then it'll just have, it's like a couple of pages of special rules. Like this unit has Elite, and then there'll be just a double page with every single special rule in the game on it. So you know exactly where to look if you don't know it. So it's very, very quick. It's not like 40k where there are just endless pages that have to be referenced between multiple books. So I like the way Mantic do it as well. Even though they don't have everything you need on one little sheet, it doesn't say what Elite actually does under the unit. You just have to turn to the page that has all the special rules on it, which I think is simple enough. And there are so few of them that once you've played a few games with that unit, you'll have learnt what they all mean anyway. And then they all have the same named rules between the units. So if you have Elite on an elf, and then you have an orc that also has Elite, you'll know what it does. Let's see. There aren't multiple rules that do the same thing. Like in 40k, you'll have, like the Space Marines have a particular rule that gives them two other rules, which I've always found really weird. It's like they're trying to save space in the book, but then it requires them bringing out 8 different books to tell you what all those things actually do. It's really strange. Let's see. Some people are demanding more books and some people are demanding less books. Joshua Atkinson is a big fan of the Age of Sigmar War Scroll method. Yeah, Bazooka Jerembo, the rules shouldn't be something that you have to figure out and cross-reference before you can play. Yeah, they do hold up the game of 40k a lot. Fantasy 8th edition wasn't quite as bad as 40k is, just because there were less books to look through. Slightly less of a treasure hunt, but there was still a bit of it in there. Not as much, though. Newbie says that you shouldn't be dumbing down 40k, I think, or no way the dumbing down of AOS should be ported over to 40k. Things wound on 3+, etc. He thinks that's a silly rule mechanic. Well, you may say that. You may think, well, that wouldn't work with a tank. Why should a bolt gun hurt a tank on the same roll as a las cannon? But all you would do is you just give the tank lots and lots of wounds for a start. And you can have the las cannon do like d6 wounds and the bolt gun only do 1. So that's a way you could make it very, very easy. And then when the Land Raider has taken 5 wounds, one of the weapons can't be fired each turn. And when it's taken 10 wounds, it's immobilized. When it's taken 15 wounds, it blows up. So I think that's an easy way of doing it. And I'm sure people would complain if they changed the 40k rules. It's got a very large and vibrant tournament scene in the community. But sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, as it were, for the best. And I think it would be for the best. It's done wonders for Warhammer, seemingly, because the company's profits are up. And 8th edition, while it was big on the internet, it probably wasn't at all big in their stores. And it didn't really encourage new players to come in. Age of Sigmar certainly has done that. Now, let's see. Newbie, vehicles should go to wounds anyway. Armor value and toughness wounds are not the same. Yeah, everything should go to wounds. Everything. It's like the way beasts decline in power in Age of Sigmar. 40k definitely needs to go that way. Joshua Atkinson, I agree. I don't want to keep looking at graphs to see stats. You have to keep asking your opponent what their guys can do, slowing down the game. Yes. In most games, you have to ask your opponent something simple like, what's their toughness? But when you have to have the entire contents of a book explained to you to fight a single unit, then it is a bit much. Dreddy says, vehicles should go back to using 20 different dice for armor penetration and with 30 random damage tables. Now, while damage tables were fun in the old days, when you had your vehicle sheets, you got quite a lot of them in the old 40k boxed game, actually, even for the vehicles that weren't in the sheet. Like I remember there was like a Predator card, and then you would roll on the damage table at the back, and it would be, you roll a 6, be something like a large explosion tears through the crew compartment, roll a dice for each model on board. On the roll of a 4, 5, or 6, they are hit and killed. I think that was probably for the Rhino, because obviously that can transport troops. And nowadays, blowing up vehicles doesn't really seem to do anything to the people inside. They just, well, the vehicle's been totally wrecked. There's a raging, fiery inferno. The engine's just exploded right next to me. But you know what? Out I get, and I can just charge now as well. It always seemed a little bit weird to me. Unless there's a rule somewhere that says they are supposed to take some damage, but not to my knowledge. Maybe if the vehicle completely blows up and isn't just wrecked from taking lots of small hits. But it always seemed a bit weird that models don't have a high chance of dying when the transport blows up. It's lucky they don't, though, because vehicles are so easy to blow up in 40k. There are so many things that basically guarantee you glancing hits, and then as soon as they take 4 glancing hits, they're just dead. So I would like to see lots of wounds on vehicles with diminishing power value as they take more of them. Let's see. Mickey Genba, I don't think people will complain at 40k changes. They will all be okay with it. The smell of burning Space Marines, I can already smell it. And I can imagine there are going to be multiple new holes formed in the ozone layer as soon as the changes are made with all the burning plastic tactical Marines. Let's see. Samuel says, my 8th edition fantasy book is still propping up one side of my house. Remind me not to go to your house if it's got a book propping up one side of it. I can imagine propping up a table with an 8th edition fantasy book nowadays. I've still got my books around somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, actually. I haven't looked at it for a long time. YouTube newbie, a basic strength 4 hit from a vehicle explosion. Obviously, a model's armor helps. Yeah, basic strength 4 hit. What's that, though, when you're a Terminator? Absolutely nothing. Although, if you're rolling a lot of ones, then maybe. Dreddy says it'll be a great time for 40k on eBay again, like when Age of Sigmar came out. Yes, I'm sure it will be. But will there be demand for the same stuff? It depends if they get rid of any of the races, doesn't it? If they completely wipe any of them out, because I heard the Eldar just gave birth to their death god or something, which they mused could be signaling the end for the Eldar, potentially. And if it did, and they completely wrote them out of the game, then I'm sure their value would just skyrocket to no end. Let's see. Newbie says it needs a better rules layout, just not the Age of Sigmar system. So Newbie will be very, very angry, and he will be one of the people contributing to the downfall of Earth's atmosphere if 40k takes on an Age of Sigmar-like set of changes. He'll be setting fire to his Marines. Although Newbie, I think he's pretty old, so they might actually be metal, so I'm not sure that setting fire to them would help too much. He might have to, you know, like at the end of Terminator 2, he might have to just cast them into the molten metal. Let's see. Dreddy says the Eldar will become scuttling Dar. If the Eldar become mutated and grow extra legs, that would be quite funny. Yes, Bazooka, they could just be reborn into something else, which is kind of what they've done with fantasy. If you look at the dwarves, some of them being, the Slayers in particular, being reborn as the Fire Slayers, there's no reason that the 40k races can't undergo similar changes and just change the look a little bit, just so people feel compelled to buy the new models rather than using the old ones. Mickey Genver needs more tea. Does that mean you're going to actually miss a few minutes of the show making tea? That doesn't sound very wise. Let's see. Newbie said toilet for the toilet god earlier. Yeah, I don't think Khorne is going to change into the toilet god. I did see some speculation that he was going to turn into like the vegetable god to appease animal rights activists. Okay, any other thoughts on this? Because otherwise, I'm going to show you my balls once we're finished on this topic. Don't get too excited, though. Raphael Perry says, if 40k is going to have an end times and get remade into something nobody likes, ... Does that mean the Sisters of Sigmar will be taking the role of the Sigmarines and the new poster boys of the new 41st millennium? Who knows? It would be really funny if Age of Sigmar and 40k merge at some point. That would get a lot of people very angry. Newbie says all his models were put into his pyramid when he was laid to rest. I didn't know you were quite that old. Bazooka Jerumbo is a big fan of Space Marines and says they're never going anywhere. There's a lot of talk about sweatpants tonight. There's something to do with raising a sweatpants fund for YouTube personalities from the audience. I know YouTube celebrities do like to squeeze as much cash out of the audience as they can, but I'm not sure I would ever resort to the audience to fund a pair of trousers. Certainly not on my agenda anytime soon. Right, let's have a look at my balls, shall we? So, I bought some balls during the Macrocosm Balls Kickstarter quite a while ago, planning to use them in Kings of War as more beasts. They're not completely finished yet, but I'm going to show you the unit here. So let's see if the camera will focus on them. It certainly should do. There we go, look at that. So there are my balls. 2 units of them. So I'll be able to put them together to make them one big unit or 2 smaller ones. And I think they're actually looking really, really good, I think. So the way I've painted them, I'll go into more detail on this on next month's What I Painted This Month video, if you want to hear all about that. But mostly it involves airbrushing and glazing. So the only thing that needs doing to these at the moment is adding some snow to the bases. That's pretty much it. I might actually do that live on the show tonight to show you exactly how I do that to keep the snow at its whitest, because there is a trick to that. Dreddy says you could get a PayPal donation link. She's talking to Skeleton Flower here. Because Skeleton Flower is actually trying to raise money for a new pair of pants, I think. Because he has been known to do live streams pantless in the past. So if you want to subscribe to Skeleton Flower and check out some of his pantless live streams, then feel free. Mickey Genver is impressed with the sight of my balls, apparently. Skeleton Flower could never accept money for pants. What would you accept money for, though? If there's something you needed to buy and the audience wanted to pay for it? Let's see. Samuel says, who remembers Terrorhawks? Yes, the old classic. Things like that. They're supposed to be children's TV, but they're actually quite horrifying. All those old kind of puppet TV programs. Mickey Genver says, Skeleton's pantless antics are shocking. They are. It's quite scandalous that anyone could do a show wearing no pants. I am planning to do a nude live stream at some point. Just get a whole group of people that can be trusted not to forget and accidentally stand up. So that's going to rule out probably... I know Remington can't be trusted to keep his bits to himself after he accidentally had his phone facing the wrong way and took a picture of his own like thighs and potential dangler region and sent it to me by accident. So he probably can't be trusted. And everyone will have to be like from this level up, I think. So we wouldn't discriminate. We'd be able to have women on the show as well then. But I think it would be a naked charity live stream where people would donate money in order to watch. I think that could be quite entertaining. Newbie says 40k is a very divisive conversation topic. Yes, it is. Some people love 40k, some people despise it. Skeleton Flower says, accident. Yes, I do have my doubts, although you'd have to talk to Mr. Remington about that. It actually happened live on a show. I can't remember which episode it is, but if you go back and watch every single episode of the Andy and Rem show, you'll find it eventually. He's trying to take a picture of his miniatures or something and send it to me, and then there's a comedy moment. So you have to go back and find that. Let's see. Mickey Genvo would actually be tempted to do that. I'm assuming she's talking about being on the Naked Charity live stream. Raphael Perry, despise is a rather polite way of describing my feelings for 40k. Oh, that sounds a bit harsh. I'm really not a fan of it at all. I think it needs a lot of changes, just the rules, just because they are so all over the place. A total mess. This edition's been out for quite a while, but a lot of the books, a lot of the troubles date back to maybe 2 or 3 editions ago, because the rules haven't changed that much since then. It's really just become more and more bloated and difficult to fathom since then. Let's see. Bazooka Jarumbo, accident. The photo was sent Andy and not someone else. I think if he was intentionally taking a picture of his groinal region and sending it to somebody, I think it would have been a bit more graphic, the picture. It was actually fairly PG, the picture he sent me. Luckily for him. But I think he would have made it a lot more explicit if he was actually sending it to someone with that intention. Raphael Perry, they need to put squats back in the game. Yes, that would actually... That's the only thing I can think of that would encourage me to start up a new 40k army. Unless they've already done the Steamhead Dwarden for Age of Sigmar by then, in which case I'd probably prioritise them. Just because... Maybe if they change the 40k rule system as well, if they change the 40k rules so that it was like Age of Sigmar, and then they release squats, then I think they may actually take precedence over a new fantasy dwarf army for me. That's the only way it could happen, I think. It doesn't have to go total Age of Sigmar, the rules, just a few subtle changes, like make the rules more compact, make it simpler, and I think that is the way to go. Right, so I asked on the old Facebook group whether anyone had any questions earlier. So let's have a look. Anyone who's not a member of the Facebook group, by the way, should click the link in the description. Let's see. So, Mr. Skeleton asked how I got into wargaming, which I'm sure I've already told somewhere close to about 1,000 times, but I'll give you the gist of it. So, my first exposure to miniatures would have been one of my cousins who had some Space Marines and had a land speeder that he'd made out of like a deodorant bottle or something, as everyone seemed to back in the day. And then once I'd seen them, I thought they were cool. So my brother and I purchased some just random miniatures. We had like a wizard, some Necromunda models, probably a Space Marine thrown in there. We just bought bits from various game systems because we didn't really know what we were doing. And I used to read some of the old classic White Dwarf magazines. And then I got into Epic Titan Legions and other people around me got into 40k, so I just started playing that because no one wanted to play Epic, so it was too difficult. And 40k was, even though 40k was ridiculously difficult back then, it would have been, what, the second edition probably, with the Space Marines versus the Orcs, with the single pose Gretchen and the Goth Orcs. And I had fun converting some of those Space Marines. I used like the sponsons from a Predator to mount a las cannon on a guy's head, which I thought was pretty funny. I just didn't give him any arms, so that was comical. And that's really how I got into it. It was just randomly exposed to miniatures and thought they were cool. And then I did take some serious time off as well, between, let's say, 2005 and when would I have started to get back into it again? It was only shortly before I got into the old YouTube channel. So that would have been, I probably started watching Wargaming videos online about early 2012, maybe. Yeah, because I was just randomly browsing through YouTube and saw the likes of the Beasts of War and Blue Table Painting and Joey Berry and whoever else was around at that time. Mainly the fantasy videos I was watching. Back then, when Beasts of War were actually covering GW products a bit more, they would do like breakdowns of the army books, and it was the Vampire Accounts had a new book at that time. So I remember watching all their videos on that, and they were breaking down 40k codexes, and I was listening to the Necron one, I think, was new at that time. So those were some of the early videos I started watching. And then I still had my Dwarf army. They were the only ones I hadn't sold. So I thought, why don't I get in touch with old Halfling Pete and see if he wants to play a game, because his Halfling army is still a thing. And then he came around, we had a couple of games, and then I think we've only had about one since then because he's been very, very busy. But then I already had some YouTube channels by that point, and I really enjoyed the interaction with the wargaming community online. So I thought, well, why don't I join in and throw my YouTubing hat into the wargaming ring, as it were? And then it started to take off a little bit. Obviously, it's not really a big time channel. I like to say that I'm an A-list celebrity, but in the wargaming sense, let's see, how many subscribers would I have to be to break into like YouTube royalty in the wargaming sense? Because I know Mini Wargaming are the biggest. They've probably got, what, 300,000 maybe at most. Then there's a huge gap, I think. There's probably a couple of other big ones that I just don't watch or have never watched because they've only ever done 40k. Then you've got the likes of Beasts of War. How many do they have now? I'm not even sure. But I know they suffered a bit of a setback because they lost their channel at one point and had to remake it. So that set them back a few thousand subscribers. But there's other up-and-coming channels as well. But really, though, I'm fairly satisfied with where mine is at the moment. It would be nice to have like 1 million subscribers and just be drowning in cash. But that's not really likely to happen in the wargaming community. There are ways, of course, that you can build up a channel faster, most of which I'm aware of, but most of which I don't actually use on my channel. The one thing I do is regular content, though. Same day of the week, attempting to, at least, particularly the Andy and Rome show, which every Tuesday and now every other Tuesday at the moment. But that helps a lot. So regular content, same day of the week, same time is very helpful. Another big thing that I definitely don't follow is making videos about 9 or 10 minutes long. Longer than that, people often don't click on them at all. And if they're only 2 minutes long, I know I don't click on videos that are only 2 minutes long, really. But most people seem to watch videos that are 10 minutes long. So if you just do 10-minute videos, and if you make them vague enough so that they can apply to every single game system or only the popular ones, then that's going to help as well. If you do nothing but Necromunda videos that are 3-hour-long discussions, then you're probably not going to get a whole lot of subscribers. If you're doing a 10-minute look at all the latest 40k releases, then you're probably going to do a lot better. But again, even if you follow all the rules, you can still fail miserably because there is a lot of luck involved. And if you follow none of the rules, you can still make it big by pure chance. So you never know. There are things you can do to maximize your chances of YouTubing royalty success, but there are no guarantees out there. Dreddy says she doesn't have regular content, but she has regular contempt. Yep, that's also helpful, though. Let's see. MC1 Gamer, I am a machine that needs regular oiling. Yes, that's fair enough. quite a few people have popped in the last few minutes. It's starting to fill up in the old chat. The Rust Belt Blacksmith, which is an excellent name. What if Steamhead Dwarden can be played as squats in 40k? If they could, that would be perfect, because then I could just buy an army. And if they had, like, if the 40k versions had guns and the Age of Sigmar versions had mechanical crossbows or something, then you could always just mix and match or magnetize them, something like that. That wouldn't be too far beyond the realm of possibility, although I think aesthetically the new dwarves will be different enough from any potential squat release that they couldn't do that. That's just my hunch, because there aren't really many armies that can cross over. It's really only demons. Let's see. Newbie. YouTube superhero names versus Facebook real names. I'm not sure what he's talking about here. But yes, some people in the old YouTube comments use their real names. Some of them use pseudonyms. And then on Facebook, most people have their real name, because if Facebook catches you using a false name, they usually destroy your account. But then there are some people with just ridiculously fake, clearly fake Facebook names. I don't have a huge problem with people using false names on Facebook, though. I think they should be allowed to within reason. If you're hiding in witness protection or something, you don't want your real name out there to see. If I was in witness protection, then I'm doing a really terrible job at hiding, since I'm actively putting out video content every week and having a bright orange background so that you can't possibly miss my video thumbnail when you're going down on the page. Let's see. Bazooka J Rambo. My Facebook middle name is clearly not fake. If you're referring to Bazooka or Rambo, I'm sure Bazooka J Rambo is your real name, and the name I've seen on Facebook is completely fake, by the way. That is my assumption. And I just thanked my lucky stars that I muted my phone, because it just lit up, which suggested something just came through that would have created an incredibly loud noise right next to the microphone. That would have been hilarious. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the old Facebook and see what people were asking on there. Paul says, or Powell should it be, since he is in fact a German. What was your breakfast like? Well, today I had honey nut cornflakes. I think that's what they're called. Yes, they're like Kellogg's Crunchy Nut, but they're the supermarket own brand, which are superior in my opinion. And they were quite tasty. Nothing too exciting about breakfast cereal though. And other questions on there. Lee Fellows says, fanboys and how they should bite the curb. Starts the controversy. Get those clicks. Well, what do I think about the term fanboys in general? Well, let's see. So it's mainly used to describe people that are endlessly overlooking flaws in whatever they are a fan of and going overboard in the defense of it. So you could say that every game system has some of those, but particularly those that have been around for a long time, they'll eventually attract more and more of those types of fans. So 40k, for example, I remember many times in the past where I've made jokes about 40k, you know how I do, because I don't take it very seriously, so I'll joke about the Emperor sitting on the toilet and all that nonsense. Some people seem to get a bit offended by that because they take 40k very seriously. I've put up joke images online before, making fun of GW in general, that haven't got a very nice response. And when Age of Sigmar was coming out and I put up my Betrayed Wargamer series, a lot of people thought that was real because my accent was so utterly convincing that they thought that was a real American who was angry with Age of Sigmar. And a lot of the GW fanboys, if you will, leapt to GW's defense there and put the Betrayed Wargamer in his place. But I don't think I've got too much to say on this topic because it's nice that people have passion about something. It'd be better if they were able to not take things so personally sometimes, though. But I can understand why they do. Let's see. There was a question about pants in here. Mickey Genver, how did you get into pants? Oops, that was a question for the skeleton group. Yeah, Skeleton Flower is the resident YouTube pants expert. So if you have any serious questions about pants, you should go over to his channel and ask those on his shows. But I suppose I can answer some questions about pants. So the kind of trouser that I prefer, I can't wear jeans. I find them too restrictive. If you've ever seen like Jean-Claude Van Damme or Chuck Norris doing a roundhouse kick, imagine how restricting that would be if they were just wearing jeans. So, and I'm reliably informed that they wear like modified jeans so they can pull off those moves. So I don't like my legs to feel too restricted. So I'll typically wear, let's flash some leg on the screen here, shall we? Here we go. There, look at that. That's the kind of material that I would like my trouser to be made from. Like the kind of tracksuit kind of trousers. That's typically what I wear because they are comfortable. And let's see, any variety of trousers in my wearing department. Shorts, occasionally. I've got a pair of orange shorts, but it's a bit too cold for them at this time of year. Dreddy says rubber jeans. That just sounds terrible. Let's see. As far as underpants go, then I know Skeleton Flower is not a fan of wearing underpants either. So if you're interested in just completely pantless content, then that is the place to be. But MC1 Gamer says real martial artists have their gonads removed so they can do those extreme stretches. I wouldn't be too surprised. People do make sacrifices for their martial art, certainly. As far as underwear goes, though, I don't think I've ever been out and about town without underwear, but I know that some people do. It's a risky move, though. Skeleton Flower says this is slander. I don't know. I think it's pretty much in line with public opinion. Bazooka J. Rambo, trousers made of slinkies for Rem. I'm struggling to think how that would work, because it would kind of lose its slinky effect if it was on your leg, wouldn't it? MC1 Gamer says going commando is a skill not easily mastered. I can imagine. If anyone knows any of the particular skills that go into wearing no underwear, then let me know. Dreddy says we should donate edible underwear to Skeleton. I don't know, though, because then if he eats it, then he won't have any underwear. So I think we should just send him actual just clothes for him to wear, because clearly he's spending so much money on miniatures and paints that he can't afford it. Okay, any other questions on Facebook? Let's see. I'm going to find if there are any that aren't pant related here. Let's see. Michael Nichols wanted to know how I got into orange. Well, I might have already told this story at some point as well, but I'll go through it anyway, briefly. So, the year was 2008. My fashion sense was incredibly bland. It would be like black or dark blue trousers, white or black t-shirt. I thought that was painfully dull. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to start wearing some kind of crazy clothing to stand out, but what color to choose? And I was looking around and I saw this wonderful orange t-shirt and I thought, you know what, I'll wear that. And then that was the start. And a couple of people commented on the fact that I was wearing orange, which was very out of character for me at the time. And I stuck with it from there. And I started buying more orange clothes and asking people to give me orange clothes for my birthday and for Christmas. And it snowballed out of control into a giant orange avalanche of fabric. So there's the story. And now it's part of my branding. So when people see the orange, they know it's me. Which ties in very nicely with being an A-list celebrity, because you have to keep your recognition high. If I wanted to go undercover to a wargaming event, then I would wear no orange at all, and I would probably just blend in smoothly. Let's see. MC1 Gamer is talking about conditioning the skin for the ability to go without underwear and how difficult it is. Yeah, I can imagine that is quite difficult, actually, because the inside of your average trouser probably isn't built to rub against such delicate regions. Underwear is expected. TFF Baz says, I am a secret Dutchman, true story. Wasgob says, the Orange Overlord. Yeah, if I do one of those DNA tests where they tell you your ancestry and everything, there might end up being some Dutch in there, which is why I eventually leant towards Orange. You never know. Maybe one day. Wraith13 has popped up in the chat. Hello there. Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Wraith13. When it comes to wargaming, you just kind of assume everyone's male, don't you? Because it is very much a male-dominated hobby until they say otherwise, or unless their name is like Flower Girl, XX, Pink, what have you. The kind of names that I would always get on my old channel where I review PC games, I reviewed a lot of pony games. So like every day I would get multiple new subscribers with names like Pony Girl 1998 and things like that. So yeah, I am an expert in YouTube usernames. I do look at the channel of everyone that subscribes to me, by the way. If I ever get to the point where I'm getting like 1,000 new subscribers a day, maybe I won't be able to do that. But at the moment, it's usually not that many. The most fruitful period in my channel was when Age of Sigmar was fresh and juicy. And my channel was one of the top results for Age of Sigmar content. And I was getting between 10 and 15 a day at one point. But even then, I was still looking at every single one. Sometimes it's horrifying, though, because you see that they're subscribed to some other channels that maybe you frown upon, and you think, what kind of people are watching me here? But most of them are fine. And it's difficult to start, even if you have like the most terrible thing you could think of. Like, let's say a KKK member subscribes to your YouTube channel. Just based on what their video likes are, you have a pretty good idea that's what they're into, but you're not 100% sure that they are an actual fully fledged member. Do you just ban them from viewing your content? They could always just come back with another name that doesn't have that kind of subscribing history. So it's a tricky one. Once you start banning anyone from viewing your videos, where do you draw the line? Unless they start leaving like horribly racist comments all over your videos, in which case then I am very quick with the old ban hammer there. But if it's just in someone's browsing, their YouTube browsing history, then it's a difficult, there's a line. And I'm sure there are people out there that have crossed it. I think only one person I ever immediately banned from viewing my channel based on videos that they had liked. Only one. So out of over 2,000, that's not bad going. Let's see. Skeleton Flower apparently is going to be making pole dancing videos as well, by the sounds of it. Now, are they going to be combined with the pantless videos? Because that sounds like it would be potentially painful. Let's see. Anything interesting going on in the chat? Right, I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you my technique for keeping snow at its whitest on bases. So while I set up the camera and everything, I'm going to let you have a look at this image right here. So you can be looking at that, and I'm going to get the camera into position so you can look at my hobby area, which I'm just clearing now. This is going to be very educational for everybody, by the way. Just moving a few bits of random tat from around the area. Some bits of cork here for some reason, which I'm sliding out of the way. And I need to make sure I've got everything I need. So let's bring the old webcam down, and I'm going to attach it to this piece of furniture here and point it down into the appropriate region. Okay, let's see if that wants to stay. Okay, here we go. Right, okay, you can see the general hobby area there, and you can see this container right here, which is very important for this process. So I'm going to be snowing up these bases for my balls. My balls are going to be nice and snow covered when I've finished. So I've got my basing accessories, which I keep under the desk, and parts of them fall out the box each time. And I have this snow here, which is from Gale Force 9. Hobby Scenics. I can't remember when I got this. I think Spud might have sent that to me ages ago. But it's lasted a really long way. If you see how many goblins I've got in my Kings of War army, then you can see how long it's lasted me. So a very long time. And you can see that I've already put, if I put this unit here, you can see that I already have, let's see if we can get the webcam pointing a bit further down. Let's tilt it a bit more. It's difficult. There we go. Okay, so you can see I've already got snow tufts on there, like grass tufts that are quite snowy. So I put those down first and just stuck them down with PVA, because otherwise it gets a bit messy doing that later. And I want the snow to go around the edges of those so that it looks like it's embedded in the snow rather than just plopped on top. So I'm going to be using this tray as well when I actually put the snow powder on, which will prevent the snow from going all over my trousers, which will turn this into a pantless video. And I don't want to compete with skeleton flour on that front. So let's move those out the way for a second. And the first thing, well, two things you're going to need here. You're going to need white paint and you're going to need PVA glue. So originally when I was putting the snow down, I just used the PVA glue, but I found that after a while it sometimes started to yellow a bit, especially if you're working on a textured surface. Then you'll get some areas where the PVA dries thicker than others, which can cause it not to be perfectly white all round. And also the snow powder can it can absorb bits of dirt occasionally, and they can discolor it. So we want to keep it as white as possible. So I started adding white paint to it. I don't just use pure white paint on its own, because I find that it dries so fast that it's difficult to do the whole lot in one go, and you end up with kind of snow tide marks, which nobody wants. So combining PVA and the white paint, and possibly a bit of water as well. So here we go. Let's start off. I'm doing 2 bases worth here. I always do too much, but it doesn't really matter because this stuff is incredibly cheap and it's a huge bottle. So just squeezing out some PVA first of all here. Apparently Mickey Genver uses water effects. Well, aren't you fancy? Okay, that's probably enough PVA there. Then we're going, oh, there's a very funny joke from Dreddy. If it gets yellow because you were using PVA. Now I've got this game color white here, which I'm going to give a good shake. And then I'm not going to put a huge amount in. I'm going to just put a few drops. I usually don't have a specific number of drops in mind, just until it looks about right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's go with. Let's have 10 actually. Nice round number. So there's 9, there's 10. Okay, now I'm going to mix it together with a stick. Here we go. Here's the stick. Mix, 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 mix. And I'm going to put a tiny bit of water in there with it as well. And then give it a proper mix. So let's get a paintbrush of some kind and drop a little bit of water in there. Not much, just a tiny bit. And let's get mixing again. I'm sure this is riveting viewing for everybody out there. Well, the viewing numbers for the show haven't dropped off significantly since I started this segment of the show, so it must be a surefire hit. I'll have to do Andy's Hobby Corner every week, I think. This is just wall-to-wall entertainment, juicy goodness being freshly squeezed out of the fruit of YouTube. It's not even the low-hanging fruit, it's like the high-quality fruit you have to climb right to the top for, but once you get there, you're grateful because it hasn't been nibbled on by all the creatures, apart from the creatures that dwell on tops of the trees who are a bit more gentle. So, I'm not sure where that was going. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to move this that way a tad, and then let's see if I can actually do this on camera accurately. I'm going to turn the light on, and I'm going to start painting this with a cruddy artificial brush all over the white surfaces here that I want the snow to stick to. And at the end, anywhere that's looking slightly dry, there shouldn't be too many places, but I'll put a bit extra on if anywhere looks mildly dry at the end. It doesn't really matter how thick it is, because once it dries, it shrinks really small anyway, with the PVA in there. And the good thing about adding the PVA is that even when it does dry, for it to completely dry takes a really long time. So even if it looks dry, it's probably not actually, and it'll still adhere to the snow particles. So if this was a regular YouTube video now that was edited, this is where I would skip forwards until the whole base was covered, because this is going to be quite time consuming. But I'm sure it's very entertaining watching my legendary precision brush strokes. Also, you can have the ultimate nightmare where you accidentally brush this mixture of PVA and white onto one of the miniatures at this point. That's always terrible when that happens, especially the orange goblins, because it stands out so much. Luckily, with these guys, the underside is pretty much white with blue glaze over it. So if I accidentally get some underneath them, I can just put some more blue glaze on later, and they should look exactly the same. So it won't ruin them too much. But with some models, it certainly can. And if you have a slip of the brush, it can go horribly wrong in this situation. So you have to be very, very careful. And when I'm doing around the grass tufts, then I'm covering up a few of the strands of grass around the edges, so it's really embedded in the snow when it's finished. And yes, these models are actually called balls. If you look up Macrocosm, they have their own website and they're on Facebook as well. Macrocosm. Then look for their balls range, and these are available. I got them from the Kickstarter, but that was quite a while ago, so you can just purchase them freely now, I believe. They've been out for quite a while. I just never got around to putting mine together. And they're very easy to work with. They're just one piece, of course, since they're just a ball. And it's a nice quality material, nice resin. You can see I've used cork on the bases here, which gives it a very nice three-dimensional look, rather than it just being completely flat and barren. And then the edges of that are done with grey, of course. So it looks a little bit like rocky outcrops and cliffs and such. This is going to be absolutely non-stop riveting viewing for everybody, isn't it? If anyone can't contain themselves with the excitement, then feel free to close your eyes for a minute, because you might be getting a sensory overload here. What usually happens, because the ground was already white before I started doing this, I'll end up missing a spot and then putting the snow on and finding a part that I missed, which is a bit of a nightmare. But I like to have the ground white first, just to make sure that I've minimized the chance of any other colors showing through, because that's the ultimate nightmare. Unless it's supposed to show through and you want it to look like it's a different color underneath, like a grassy plain that has snow falling on it, if that's the look you're going for, then go nuts. But this mixture of PVA and paint, it's the way I've done it for quite a while, and I'm sticking to it. Maybe I should do a show where I just whistle the whole time. I don't think I've ever done a whistling-based video, but I do whistle around the house quite a bit. Lately I've been whistling lots of the music from Cannibal the Musical, which is an excellent film, which is available to watch, no doubt highly illegally, on YouTube. Actually, it's not illegal, because I think it might be on the official Troma YouTube channel, because it was distributed by Troma, and I think they put up most of their films for free on YouTube. So I think you can actually watch it legally. So I'd recommend Cannibal the Musical. It's very, very good. There's some very catchy tunes that you'll be whistling for years to come. I think it was Dreddy that suggested that I watch that. I will have a look at the chat when I've finished this base before I move on to the next unit, because the mixture in the pot isn't going to dry up that fast. But I just don't, because it's spread more thinly on the base, it's going to dry faster than it is in the pot. So I'm going to get this done first. Oh, and I've just dabbed a tiny bit onto his chin, which can be fixed later, but it's so difficult to avoid that completely. I would say it's almost impossible. doing the very, I'm sure you can't see all of this right now, but I'm doing the very delicate parts between rocks and such. So it can get a little bit tricky. I've just got a bit on him, but I'll just wipe that off quick with my finger. Because it's mixed with the PVA, it should be easier to wipe off than paint usually is, which is another bonus. You just have to be careful that the snow doesn't stick to those bits where the paint strayed. Lucky thing about these is that they're slightly bouncing off the ground, so I shouldn't be able to catch too much snow underneath them by accidentally touching them with the brush. Should happen less often with these than with the other goblins that I've painted, because they were obviously touching the ground on their bases. And around the feet and the legs especially, when you turn the model to a certain angle and see that you've caught like the inside of their knee with the brush during this stage, and you've ruined everything. I'm sure there's something to be said for taking the models off the base before you do this as well. But obviously most of us stick our models down to the base. Not doing that sounds like a lot of effort. Okay, I think we're almost done with this one now. Just a bit on the ground around here at the front. Then I think we'll be ready for the snow. And then once we do that, that'll reveal if I've missed any spots as well, which is very annoying at this stage. If anyone can name that song, then you won't win a prize, but you'll win 5 internets. Almost done here. Just making sure I haven't missed a spot. I'm sure I've missed at least one spot somewhere. The view count hasn't actually gone down at all since I started doing this, so people must be thoroughly engaged by this content. I suppose people watch those very educational Duncan painting videos, don't they, that go on for 45 minutes? But then again, he does have that wonderful soothing personality. The Dunkmeister. Okay, I think we are pretty much ready to start tipping snow onto this. Maybe a tiny bit more under this guy. Almost time. And then any snow that strays onto the wrong place, I'm going to just grab off after it's applied. So I'm going to have to do this bit. I suppose I can do it right here under the camera. So there's the base. Here's the snow. I'm just going to tip it over the whole thing and then shake it to get it all off again, or all the loose snow. So here we go. Snowing all over here. Then I'm going to tilt it to a different angle so I'm not missing anything. And another angle. And now most of it just falls off again. Giving it a bit of a tap to make sure all the loose snow is coming off. And and then I'm going to take it away and just give it a bit of a blow. Okay, I'm just examining it under the light, away from the camera now, to see if I've missed any bits. And I can only see a tiny bit that doesn't have any snow on it at first glance. And there's a tiny bit of snow that's attached underneath someone's chin. But I'm not too concerned by that. The only thing that does concern me, and I'm just going to get a tiny little brush out, because the one bit that's missing is like right under this guy here. There's a tiny bit where I couldn't quite get the brush, so I've just got a smaller brush here. Then we're going to very delicately maneuver that under him, trying not to touch him at all, and splodge some of this mixture under there. Okay, I think that should do it. Then I'm going to drip a bit of snow under there. Okay, so I think that one is complete. And if I spot anything else, I can always go back and add a tiny bit of snow later if I need to. But hopefully that's nailed it. Let's have a look if it's going to focus. It should do. It's a very nice camera. There we go. Look at that. Angry balls with snow all around. And I'm going to add some blood as well once the snow is all dry. Just a bit to some of them and have it dripping off their mouths, maybe into the snow a bit. So that's going to be fun. So I'm going to put them to the one side and bring out the next unit. I'm just going to wash that tiny brush in case I don't use it again. This next one is going to be much easier, and I'll show you why in a second. But before I continue with that, I need to gather up all the snow again out of this pot and put it back into the small pot. And there's a couple of hairs that have landed in there, so I'm going to extract those. Extract any rogue bits of other colour that have made their way in there. And then try and tip as much as I can back into here. Oh, there's another hair. It's a messy job pouring the snow back and forth, and any stray bits in there I do tend to just remove with some tweezers, because occasionally something excess will leap in there. And bits of grass that came off the base will end up in there, no doubt, as well. But I'm not too concerned about them. So you can see there's a few bits in there that I don't want, so I'm going to pluck those out now and send them off on their merry way, never to be seen again. This is really near the end of the snow pot, so I'm not too concerned about it becoming contaminated. I'm not using it for any other models, just these, and they do have a bit of greenery on their bases, so I'm not bothered about this slight contamination going on here. If it was a fresh pot, I might be more concerned if I was using it on multiple projects, in which case I'd just put some aside and only use that specific batch for the project, so that if any bits of grass fell in, it wouldn't mess it up for everybody else. Okay, that'll do with that. The view count's still quite healthy in here, which is nice to see. Okay, let's have a look at the old comments now before I move on to the next unit. This mixture is still going to last quite a while. Let's see, Josh Joyce, blow those balls. Yes, there was certainly some blowing of balls that happened just then. People talking about Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Okay, I'm going to scroll way up there, actually. Okay, let's see, where was I? Mickey Jennifer, lemon-flavoured snow is the nicest. Yes, that yellow snow is quite tasty. If you ever see it, scoop it up in your hands, and no, don't really. Never do that. Freshly squeezed. Why are we talking about giraffes in the chat, by the way? Anyone know? Bazooka J. Rambo is joining in by mixing Tamiya thinner into a pot of drying out Imperial primer. That sounds like... Okay, I'm not going to lie, that doesn't sound fun at all. Yes, so if anyone orders these, a set of their own balls from Macrocosm, then you should tell them that you saw them featured on this channel. Usually when you order something on a website, you can put a little note in there, can't you, on the website? You should put in that you saw them featured on my show. Let's see. Dreddy says there is creepy ASMR videos where people softly whistle and whisper and stuff. Yes, I am aware of those. I'm not sure whether my voice would be suited to them, because the quieter I get, the croakier my voice gets, and I'm not sure whether that's what people who are into that stuff go for. You can see my hand on the mouse here, can't you? It's quite an old mouse, this, but it's a nice one. 2 thin coats are better than 1 thick one, says Newbie. Yep. Yes, Newbie, the balls are slightly bouncing off the ground. More so in this unit. If I tilt them, you can see that some of them are very much off the ground. So if I ever put the 2 units together, because at the moment they're just 2 troops, if I put them together into a regiment, then these ones will go at the back because they're taller. So you'll be able to see the whole lot. Dreddy wants to know what the plural of moose is. I'm pretty sure it's not meese. The majestic moose. Skeleton Flower has a pet moose called Sven. Of course you do. Okay, still scrolling. Unplanned blending, says Sean Blake. Unplanned blending is the most fun of all the blending. Okay, now I just remembered one other thing. First of all, I'm just going to wash the big brush here a second. Then I'm going to try and fix one thing that went marginally wrong on this unit here, off camera. I'm just going to get a dry little brush that's clean, and then I'm just going to get the bit of snow off the guy's chin that was stuck there accidentally. Okay, there we go. And the brush was slightly damp so that it broke down the paint mixture as well. So you don't want it to be completely dry. You want it to be clean though. And I'm just dabbing any bits of snow off my balls now that might have lingered, like in eye sockets or around the teeth or anything, or in the nostrils. Okay, so there's that unit. Done. And now we can start applying the mixture to the next. I'm going to put a tiny bit more water in the pot and then mix that in now, just to keep it not too thick. So I'll give you a nice view of the old mixing process again. Keep it nice and mixed, because I'm sure it would probably, I'm not sure if it would separate exactly, but as I take some out of it, there's a chance that I hadn't mixed it up 100% the first time round. There was a tiny bit maybe that's more PVA than paint. So just making sure it's all pulled in together. And this should be enough to do the whole thing. So let's get rid of Mr. Stick and grab Mr. Brush. And here we go. This one is going to be much easier because the balls are further off the ground and there's less top rocks that I'm having to work around with this one. So this is going to be much quicker. Mickey Genver is much more productive when viewing my balls, apparently. I'm not sure what to make of that exactly. So here we go. Hopefully you can see most of what I'm doing here, but you get the idea. Just applying this mixture again, and this one is definitely going to be much quicker than the previous one. Starting off on the ground floor, as it were. Getting into all the tiny crevices. Obviously, the smaller brush you use, the less chance there is of a mishap and the paint mixture straying into the wrong place. But also it's going to take longer. You don't want it to take too long. Depends what kind of base you're working with. If you're just going between a model's feet, then a small brush is obviously better. But for these large areas, a big juicy brush is the way to go. There's been a lot of talk of juice on this show tonight. Freshly squeezed. This is actually turning into quite a long episode as well because of this segment. It's getting me active though and hobbying more, because I wanted to do this bit on the show tonight, so I rushed and got them finished yesterday so I could do this part on the show, because I thought this would be an interesting part, watching the snow and informing the masses on how to keep it looking its whitest, because no one likes yellow snow, do they? Dogs might do. As far as humans go, though, probably not. I'm sure there are a few people out there that are into it. Like there are people out there into anything, which the internet proves on a daily basis, much to my horror, usually. Almost finished the ground level here. And then we'll be moving up. Okay, I'm going to do this little rocky outcrop here at the back. This is going to be pretty quick. This is how quick it would be if the models weren't on the base at all, because you've got no chance of accidentally hitting them with the brush. I say that, but it is still very possible, depending what angle I go in at. I still could catch one of them, so I do have to be careful still. And doing this actually reminds me, someone that I know used to make his own paints out of PVA glue and ink, because he couldn't afford actual model paints. So there you go. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the most successful and the paint could just peel off. But needs must. Not everyone has vast resources out there. I certainly don't have particularly vast resources. I just don't live a very extravagant lifestyle at all. And also being a YouTube celebrity enables me to get a lot of stuff for free as well. If I had to pay for all my own miniatures, then I would not be into nearly as many game systems, I'm sure, or have as many armies. But there are a lot of companies out there that quite wisely are willing to give out free stuff to YouTube people because of the exposure it's going to give to their game. I know at least a few people that have gotten into Kings of War purely because of my videos, so I'm sure whatever Mantic have given me for my Kings of War stuff has been worth it for them. Dead Zone as well. A lot of people have told me they got into Dead Zone after watching my videos. Obviously, GW have never given anything to me because, well, you know what GW are like. Or what they have been like, you never know in the future. They might start handing out stuff to A-listers eventually. Now that they're more entwined in the community. But there are a lot of people who think that wargaming is very, very expensive, but really when you compare it to other hobbies, it's definitely comparable, and just depends how many game systems you insist on playing. And if you're clever, you can end up with armies or gangs or whatever that you can use in multiple systems as well. I'm actually thinking of making some multi-bases for my Stormcast and using them as ogres in Kings of War. That might be interesting. I was looking at the army list. I think I could just about make a decent list out of it. The amount I have right now, it wouldn't be that easy. I would need to get a few more. But I'm on my way there, definitely. Once I had a few more units. That could be fun. we're almost done with this one now. Just going to go back to the small brush. I'm going to wash off the big one. Dreddy says wargaming is a cheaper hobby than heroin. I'm sure it is. MC1 Gamer is apparently wearing special magical pants. Here's a good question for everybody. What colour pants is everyone wearing today? Let me know. The people want to know what kind of pants are out there. Okay, I'm using the small brush here on the parts that are pretty close to the balls. So I don't want to accidentally catch the balls with the paint. I still might end up doing that, but there's a smaller chance of me having a mishap. Nobody likes a ball-related mishap. I wonder on average per week how many ball-related mishaps there are worldwide. And what would qualify as a mishap? Very almost done now. Still got quite a lot of viewers in here. People just can't get enough of my balls. Just delicately doing the finishing touches here. And I think we're just about ready to put the snow on this. And then we'll find out if I've missed any spots after that. Okay, let's do this. I'm just going to rinse the old brush. I'll go through what kind of pants everyone's wearing in a minute. If you want to tell me what kind of trousers you're wearing, which Americans would call pants, then yes. If you want to tell me what kind of underwear you're wearing, which UK people would call pants, either way, doesn't really matter. Anything that's worn from the waist down, other than socks. Okay, it's snow laughing matter time. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to turn it to an angle. It's getting all those crevices that need to be snow filled. And rotating. Right. Let's shake it off. Right, at first glance, it's looking pretty good. I can see a bit where I might dab a bit more snow, but I don't think I need any more paint there. So I'm going to use the tweezers here, pick up a bit of snow in those, and just drop it precision style into the location. It was just underneath one of the balls, but there was a bit that maybe didn't grab any snow. So I think we're all good. Just making sure from every conceivable angle that I haven't missed anything. Oh, I've spotted a tiny bit. Spotted a tiny little region that I didn't quite catch. So I'm going to get the small brush because it's only a tiny little bit. And just dropping a bit of snow in there. Oops, just knocked the webcam. Luckily there aren't any like nudists camped out in here or anything that you would have caught when the camera went flying. The camera is perched in a very precarious manner, you see. It's like wedged between two things to hold it in place. It's a very, very delicate operation, this. Right, there we go. Okay, and I think... Oh no, I might have just spotted another bit that could use a tiny bit more. And getting the old tweezers out again. Okay, I think that's done. So I'm going to put that somewhere safe for a second. Gonna have to move the badger. Right, let's rest those there for the moment. Okay, I am going to get the snow back into the pot. And then do that highly entertaining snow bits plucking that everyone enjoyed so much before. And then I'm going to head into the comments and see what everyone's saying, respond to all that, and then it'll be about time to wrap this up, I think. Not too many bits came out this time. Okay, that'll do. So let's put all the basing supplies away, including all my wonderful grass tufts. I generally use the Army Painter for my tufts. These are Tundra tufts. This is the second box of them that I've had. And I've also got some Army Painter. Yeah, there's the first box of them there that's pretty much done. And meadow flowers as well. I use those for other things. I've used those for my bolt action army and my Stormcast as well. So they're going under the desk where they belong. And let's see what else. That thing can go there. Quick rinse of the paintbrush. And then we're going to have a quick screen share so I can move the camera back in position without giving everyone a headache. So anyone out there with motion sickness can thank me later. Okay, let's get that camera back in its rightful location. There we go. I always wonder what would happen if I left the camera pointing in a weird position and someone came into this room and saw the camera like pointing down towards where the hobby area would be normally, but when the keyboard's not there, it might look like it's just pointing directly at my groin. So I dread to think what people would imagine has been going on in this room if I were to leave the camera in that exact angle. I'm sure there's a few people in the chat that have experience in those matters. I'm not going to name any names. Okay. Stopping the old screen share. Okay, I think I've got it just in the right place there. Or have I? Let's see. Oh, you can just about see things in the background there. It's supposed to be a tiny bit higher. But now you can see a tiny bit of the wall. There you go. Okay, let's see what people are saying in the old chat while I was snowing up that base real bad. pirate spiders, apparently. Apparently MC1 Gamer is going to be doing a paint-a-sode at some point. I'm not sure how I feel about paint-a-sodes. It depends if people manage to keep the entertainment flowing while painting. And some people just want to feel like they're having a nice casual chat with someone while they're painting, so they just stick a paint-a-sode on, and every now and then someone will drop in a bit of audio, but often they just focus on the painting. I'm sure Mr. MC1's paint-a-sodes will be dialogue heavy, though. I don't think I've ever heard Mr. MC1 Gamer remain silent for longer than 4 seconds. Okay, let's find out what pants everyone's wearing. So, Raphael Perry, pants are currently blue. Does that mean that the pants you're wearing are blue, or your pants are currently blue, meaning they might change to a different colour of pant at some point? Is that because you change your pants, or because the pants change colour? In which case, they would be very interesting pants. Dreddy is wearing high-quality 80% cotton, 20% polyester black sweatpants that say strong in blue on one leg, cause I am a dude bro. Those do sound like some pretty bro-ish pants there. MC1 Gamer is wearing boxers/briefs because he's confused and undecided about everything important in his life. Yeah, the kind of clothing combo items. You need to make up your mind, I think. Skeleton Flower, who is obviously pantless, but just to fit in with the crowd here, has said he's wearing black jeans. I'm not buying that for a second. Apparently Dreddy also lifts a lot of weights and posts motivational videos about being a winner. Hashtag lift Dreddy workout. Skeleton Flower doesn't own any yellow pants. Well, we know that because you just don't own any pants at all. Wraith 13, denim blue skinny jeans. Anybody else giving us any pants-based info? Can't see any. Nope. Oh yeah, there's Bazooka. Multi-blue, purple and black striped boxers. Well, on that note, I think we're going to start wrapping this one up. Skeleton says, this has gone too far. Right, I assume he's just talking about the length of the show and not the rumour that he doesn't wear pants. So, I would agree, it's time to wrap this one up. I think we've been almost going for 2 hours here because of that extended snow segment of the show, which was very entertaining for the masses. And there's still quite a bit left in there. So if you saw how much ground I covered and how much PVA and paint I put in there, that should give you some idea how much you need to use yourself. And then this, if this was just regular PVA, you would just be able to peel it off. But because the paint's in there, it seems to mess with the drying time of it. So I'm a bit hesitant to touch it for a few days until it's completely dry because I don't want to get any white splodges on me. So I'm just going to leave that for a few days and then peel it off and then use this tub again, which is actually just an old blister pack. And tomorrow, probably, I will be adding blood to 1 or 2 of these balls, and that should be a delight. So when they're finished, I'll put some pictures in the Facebook group as well, and I'll probably post them on some Kings of War pages as well, since they'll be going into my army. And the More Beasts aren't very expensive in points in Kings of War. I think it's 60 points for a troop of them, which is 5, or 95 points for a regiment. But they're definitely going to be featured in my army because they are quite handy as a screening unit, and I need something to stand in front of my trolls to stop them being charged. And they're only height 1, so I can see past them. The only possible downfall I can see is that they are yellow-bellied. So if I want to charge with lots of things and they're standing in front of my own troops and I roll a 1, they're stuck there and my other troops will be blocked in behind them, so I'll have to be very careful with the positioning. Right. Mickey Jennifer, the new game, Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl is no game. That's something that people should really seek medical advice regarding if they're experiencing that particular tabletop miniatures game. Apparently Skeleton will be suing and Mickey Jennifer will be his lawyer. An expert in pantless court proceedings. Okay, time to wrap this one up, folks. So let's have one final look at this lovely visage here. This scene that GW would be very proud of. And I think they should actually release an alternate head with my hairstyle, or at least that hairstyle, which I don't have at the moment, but it was maybe the most stylish of all hairstyles that I had for a long time. And I know people in the chat cried when it was cut off, but it was for a good cause. Okay, folks, don't forget to join the Facebook group. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to leave a permanent comment if you can be bothered waiting around 5 minutes after the show, or if you're watching this later, then you can just leave a permanent comment whenever you feel like. And with that, I will say good night out there, whatever you are.